Jai Ma. Now we enter into the last chapter of Book 1, that is the Supermind, Mind and the Overmind Maya. There is a small little, two little jokes about it. One is, of course, when mother would give meditation, and Amal Kiran would often make some nice little sketches of the sadhaks who were sitting for meditation, and he would write some comments. So one of them is, Purani ji was a wrestler, so thick built and neck, and he is lolling like this in meditation, and Amal Kiran ji makes a sketch and write, undermined by the overmind. The other is when Amrit Da is reading this chapter along with a couple of other people, and mother passes by and asks him, what are you reading? Mother, we are reading about overmind, Maya, so Brahman. So mother says, oh. He says, but we don't understand anything. So mother says, still you must read, and then she taps their head, and they are all projected into that consciousness of which they are reading. And then she comes back, and they are still in trance, brings them back and says, I can give you this experience like this, but this is not what we are here for. We are here to bring that truth into the very physical. This is the challenging task, because in trance, people have experienced certain things and they are very dazzling. As the mother says, the overmind Godheads, the overmind plane is so dazzling that it has been mistaken for the supreme truth. And that's how religions have come into existence. So what is the necessity of overmind? Well, to start with, the gap between the mind and the supermind is so big. It's greater than the gap which exists between animal and human. That's how the mother speaks of it. So between the animal and the human, we can see the big gap. And this gap is even bigger. So it's almost like taking a leap. How can human consciousness take a leap from the mind to the supermind? Mind is a principle of division. There is darkness, ignorance. Whereas supermind is a consciousness of unity. There is the plenary truth, truth of global truth. More than global. There is not only the truth as it's manifesting globally, but even that which is not yet manifested, even that is there in supermind. So the difference is very big. So how to understand or bridge this gap, and that's where Sri Aurobindo speaks of the overmind. So overmind is that which bridges this gap. Of course, there are many different layers. Sri Aurobindo will speak about it a little later in this very chapter. What it implies is practically that man will not suddenly leap from rational beings to the supramental beings. That we'll sleep one night and we'll wake up and we'll all be all illumined people with golden hairs. It won't happen like that. Sri Aurobindo and the mother have compressed the evolution, but there are stages through which we have to go. Not that we have to ascend like that, but still, even in manifestation, there would be many intermediary steps, and the mother spoke about them as intermediary species. So there will be different species. They will not know themselves as species. They are all humans, but different shades, gradations of humanity is bound to appear. Already people who go further into this yoga begin to feel a difference between what they are undergoing as a change and the world from where they came. And it's so difficult sometimes to connect with the same old pattern in which the world is repeating itself, which includes people who are into spiritual movement. Still, when they come to their normal life, their nature, it's the same. But it's so difficult to go back and connect and relate to the same things, same stories. So there are gradations through which mankind will move. But what exactly is the overmind? So we can understand one of the ways, which is actually the best ways to understand the ashram and how mother has worked out things here. So we can take Mother and Sri Aurobindo are the supramental Godhead. They are the supreme, but they have stationed themselves on the supermind. So what was their way of working? Is precisely how the supermind works. It releases the idea to overmind, but then it gives overmind to the freedom to develop it along its own lines. So you have the different departmental heads, whom the mother, she would not instruct, do this, don't do this way, that way. She would release a truth. And then it has to develop, unfold, where time to time, wherever people feel the need, at every moment they have to seek the inspiration, guidance. So overmind is like that which receives from the supermind the truths, and then it develops along its own lines. So this is something very beautiful about the ashram, which goes unnoticed. It is not a place where you have bhojan shala, that is dining room, and you have meditation room, and probably some little place to, stay. It's not like that, because overmind receives a million, tendencies, ideas, possibilities. It can receive many more because the Supreme is infinite. So it releases infinite possibilities into the overmind. It has to pick them up, and now it has to, in its freedom, realize. So there is a layer of the overmind where it receives, it knows exactly what is required. Though it's in overmind, but it's not ignorance. It knows this is what is required. And then as it releases, it has to take into account the people, the situation, the scenario, where the next layer is where the cosmic truth changes into, it doesn't change, but the ignorance becomes possible. Simply because now each department is moving along its own lines, which sometimes may come in clash with some other place which is developing along a different line. And later on it crystallizes into hard rules. That's where like religions and cults form. Because people don't have the vision of what really it meant. Especially, so they cannot rise up to the intuition. Now what the Mother and Sri Aurobindo would want, that we rise at least to the intuition and receive inspiration directly. But after some time, things have a tendency to get crystallized. So one of the examples which I remember, or two examples, both are about Dara. One is that Dara would, give the bread to fishes in the pond in Golkund. And someone complained to the mother that, this bread is not meant to be given to the fishes or anyone else. So the mother asked Dara, she knows everything, but she wants to bring out a truth which the lady or the person in charge is not able to see, the totality, because it's going under instruction. This is not to be done, not to be done. So she asked Dara, I believe you are doing it. Why are you doing it? He says, Mother, I come from a background where on occasions we could give pearls to people who were needy. Now I am only giving some bread to the fishes. So the mother laughs. She tells the lady, so what do you think I should do? Look at the beauty, her way. So says, okay, understood. So she takes into account the different tendency. And the other example of the same Dara is that, he would not come to dining room, they would wait. Now 1 o'clock, so they asked Sri Aurobindo, what do we do? He doesn't come on time. Bell rings at 12:30, he doesn't come. What do we do? So Sri Aurobindo says that you go, knock at the door, hand over a tiffin to him. Now imagine. So after a few days, they say, sir, he doesn't open the door. We go with the tiffin. He doesn't open the door. What do we do? So look at the supramental way of working. He is not saying strict rule, tell him that, he better comes, otherwise he has to go hungry. He says, put a nail, put a hanging option outside and hang the tiffin carrier there and you come back. Now you see. Now that's how, and these were her ways of revealing. So many times we'll see that a departmental head came and requested the mother for something. She would allow in her that, okay, fine, this is a freedom. People took it as mother's absolute rule, but there was never like that. There are so many examples, so many stories that how evolution takes place, how the unfolding takes place. At the Overmind, each god is allowed the freedom. So that's why we see that now we understand the stories why Brahmaji has given a Vardhan. And when he is asked, he says, what can I do? If my bhakta prays for me, I am vivash. But you should understand this will create chaos. He says, yes, Shiva gives the Vardhan to Bhasmasur, who ends up wanting to destroy Shiva by the same Vardhan. So he says, I can't help it. This is my law of being. See, each Godhead, so each departmental head he has his own law. You can't say that, this is right or wrong, but in freedom. Now, the problem is that in its origin, it is fine because there is a direct contact with the mother. But as it goes one rung below, now there will be segregation, walls will begin to appear, which should not be there. That's why mother speaks of bringing the unity. But this unity here has to be created only on the basis of evolution into Gnostic beings. There is no other way. But she says unity is a must. But this is how we see that slowly, Overmind, as it releases, things begin to become crystallized, hardened, set of rules and regulations, do's and don'ts, and then it becomes division, religions fighting with each other, ideologies fighting with each other, and then trying to create harmony by unity by coming together on a platform and speaking about it. So this is the way Supermind to Overmind things are received. Another example we can take is that a prism through which light passes. So the light is white. So prism is the Supermind. What does it do? It differentiates. There are seven shades with many shades in between. Actually, 7 primary or 3 primary, and if we look at the way computers operate the colors, 64 was the minimum. I think there are many more now. And so the prism differentiates and then it releases. Now each color will have its own play. So green will become forest and blue. Let's say the cosmic manager will put blue of the sky and the green of the forest and the green of the and the blue of the sea. It's just painting things using these colors. And that's what makes this world so beautiful and wonderful. So this is how thus Overmind picks up the oneness and releases number of. That's what is the horses, the 7 horses of sun god. So these are the 7 rays which go into creation, and then each goes and it has to fulfill its own. Now, as these start going independently and working by themselves, then immediately you allow that, which is necessary, there is the possibility of a complete fall into the darkness. Because ignorance, possibility has been created. And the moment you have a possibility that you act on your own, as we were saying the example yesterday, people may do things in the name of the mother, things which are completely contrary to the mother's will. And it can be justified. That's how it happens. Because the original intent, and mother speaks of it very interestingly. She says, and this is how the cosmos works. And it's very interesting to note it in everyday life. She says, when I inspire someone with my will, so this person receives it, and in the execution, his desire comes in. Now, will and desire are mixed. So what happens is, the result also starts getting mixed. If the desire is very prominent, the whole thing gets falsified and distorted. So she says, creation is a distortion. It's not an illusion. Each form maker has given it just a little twist. Just a little twist. So that by the time the final result we see is very different from the original intent. So that's the Overmind. Overmind is the plane of global consciousness, cosmic consciousness. It receives the truth. So Shobinda described it as a double layer, where on one side there is the transparent layer which receives exactly the truth as it is. It's a delegate of the Supermind at that level. But The other is opaque, through which now the full thing doesn't escape. Each thing goes, the unity is lost, and the reason is it's required because otherwise there will be no world, there will be no construction, it will all go to blazes. And from there, each power, each aspect released will have its own play in creation. And eventually, because it has its own independent play, it goes into ignorance, then inconscience, because ignorance and there is a difference between ignorance and inconscience. Ignorance is partial knowledge striving towards the full knowledge. But inconscience is absence of knowledge. And out of inconscience, falsehood comes into existence. Ignorance is not the home of falsehood. Ignorance is I don't know. But as ignorance enters into inconscience, it changes into its opposite. It resumes a different character. And yet it is required for the play, but that's a different thing altogether. So the word Maya, literally, where is the home of Maya? It is at the Overmind, Supermind junction. So Supermind, Maya measures out the infinite possibilities. There is the Maya which acts in full knowledge of the truth. And there is the Maya which acts in now a veil is put between the truth and so it becomes partial. So it becomes avidyamayi. And one of the stories before we read, so many beautiful stories we have in our scriptures, but one has to, after this light you can understand. So one of the stories that Lord Ram goes to Vanvas and in Chitrakoot they are, Mata Sita and he, they are together. And then one day he says, I think the time has come for the Leela to unfold. So he says, okay. So what does Mata Sita do? She keeps her Chaya body in front. She becomes Avidyamai. And the truth of Sita is held back. It's given to Agni. That's one of the ways people explain the Agni Pariksha. It's given to Agni. Agni becomes the custodian. Keep her back. And the Chaya. That's why Ravan could take her. Now comes a very interesting aspect of this story of Lakshman Rekha. Now Valmiki Ramayana doesn't talk about Lakshman Rekha, but Ramcharitmanas others speak. But it's very interesting because there are people who say, see, if you cross the Lakshman Rekha, this is what happens. But look at the beauty of the whole thing. If Mata Sita had not crossed the Lakshman Rekha, Ravan's reign would have continued ad infinitum. So it depends on how you look at it. To the supramental vision, it's necessary that she crosses the Lakshman Rekha. She becomes ignorant, otherwise Ravan could not even come near. Because it was destined that Ravan has to get converted. So she goes as if she is helpless. All this story, so we have these two aspects. Repeatedly in Ramayana it is shown even toward the end that Lord Ram knows that now Yuga is going to come to end. But at the same time, when he comes back to his normal awareness, he has to outer awareness, human awareness. He acts with all that, feeling for his brother. Lakshmana has to go back. He has to go first. Why? Because he has to arrange his couch. If you look at it, it's so interesting. He is the Sej Sayya. He has to go first. How will Narayan come without the couch being ready? So, if you look at it like this, it's joy. That's how the play in its origin is delight. If we are playing it with full awareness, it's delight. But in ignorance, it appears pleasure, pain, indifference, all these things. Okay, so that's the background. And so, now Sri Aurobindo describes very interestingly these steps through which, page 287, where he, in one line, summarizes the need of the overmind, because this is something which very often, something unique to Sri Aurobindo. People speak about superconscient and use in general. Now, technically, everything above the human mind is superconscient, meaning thereby it's above our normal awareness. So even a higher mind, intuitive mind would be superconscient. Overmind is certainly superconscient. And so is the supermind superconscient. So this is how superconscient is a general word which is used very commonly, that there is mind, there is superconscient. Now, because people don't know about the overmind, not knowing by intellectual knowing, but by experience, Therefore, they cannot explain creation. This creation and that superconscient. How can this be? So it is illusion and Maya. Now we understand why overmind is required. So, Sri Aurobindo writes, there must be somewhere, page 287, 5-6 lines below, there must be somewhere in the descending and ascending scale of being an intermediate power and plane of consciousness. Perhaps something more than that, something with an integral, something with an original creative force through which the involutionary transition from mind in the knowledge to mind in the ignorance was effected, and through which again the evolutionary reverse transition becomes intelligible and possible. So that's the overmind. So the Sri Aurobindo says again, over mind to mind, there are gradations. We have the last passage on this para, and we'll read something about these gradations. But if such an intervening gradations exist, it is clear that they must be superconscient to human mind, which does not seem to have in its normal state any entry into these higher grades of being. So what is the proof that there are these steps? So Sri Aurobindo gives us step by step all the proofs, evidence based. So one proof is the existence of intuition. It is more or less accepted everywhere that there is something like an intuition. People are trying to understand it, trying to explain, and Sri Aurobindo describes all the different types of intuitions. The other proof is mass of mystic phenomena, which psychologists and others just deny it. Now it's very interesting when we see the mass of mystic phenomena, they also form a gradation. People speak about self-realization, but we'll see that there are differences even in shades of that. Otherwise there would be no quarrel between Sagun Brahma and Nirgun Brahma. Why? Because there is one line of experience where you experience it one way, another line another way. So that's because there are different lines beyond the mind along which human consciousnesses experience something beyond it. And then he gives the most important, then there is the phenomena of inspiration, of vision, on page 289, of revelatory vision or of intuitive perception and intuitive discernment, surpassing or less illumined or less powerful normal mind action, are there, and their origin is unmistakable. So this there is an aphorism of Sri Aurobindo where he speaks about the phenomena of genius, and that's why child prodigies is nowadays one of the signs of the action of the higher consciousness. When you look at some of these dance shows, now 6-7-year-old child is dancing. He's dancing to the tune of a song whose meaning would be probably 17-18-year-old would understand. But the child's how, bhav, mudra, everything is as if. And now the interesting part is, see how these truths are actually coming. People often say, oh, all this is all in the air. No, very concretely. Earlier, people used to speak about age. So whatever be the age, 60 years age. Then people said they didn't like it. Na? They said age is a number. That's okay. Dil ko behlane ko. Now they actually say there is a difference between genetic age, there is a difference between physical age, there is a difference between psychological age, there is a difference between emotional age, and one may say there is a difference between spiritual age. So there are children who speak things which you feel are quite advanced inwardly. And there are people with a high intellectual age. There are people who are 60, but their genetic age is much less. It's very interesting. So even though they have inherited a genes, it will take much longer for that gene to get clicked. So now this idea, social age, so there are different kinds of age that human being has, meaning thereby there are different layers and levels on which we simultaneously stand. But now coming to the other part, that how can we access these? So Sri Aurobindo says we can access it. On page 290 to 91 he describes that by an inward movement we enter into the inner being, where inner being is not crammed up by the outer. Outer is like in a prison. Outer is subject to all the touches of things from outside. And those who live on the surface have this very interesting thing, or when the consciousness is projected on the surface, we see something and we immediately react to that. That's how the surface mind reacts. But the inner being has access to universal consciousness, cosmic consciousness. So it can get things from there into its little channel. And we have read about it, inner mind, inner vital, inner physical. And Sri Aurobindo says, by an inward movement of concentration, we can open a door. The second is upward. By opening upward, we can experience the self, higher ranges of consciousness, and the nirvanic stillness. So, first he says 2 successive movements, page 290, of consciousness, difficult but well within our capacity, by which we can have access to the superior gradations of our conscious existence. So, meaning thereby we don't have to just believe it like a theory, we can access it. There is first a movement inward. So, inward movement is inner being, and ultimately we can enter the soul. And through the soul we can glimpse the supermind. So this is the inward movement. And the other, we see in the last paragraph, but once this entry into the inner being is accomplished, the inner self is found to be capable of an opening, an ascent upwards into things beyond our present mental level. That is the second spiritual possibility in us. The first, most ordinary result is a discovery of vast, static and silent self. So there is a discovery of a vast, impersonal state, a universal state, full of a liberating peace. And as long as the experience lasts, nothing affects or touches, because one is beyond the touches of nature. So this is one movement, and that's how one arrives at nirvana. But what Sri Aurobindo wants us to remember, and that's where the most important part, page 291. So one is the movement towards a static self, but another less negative. Less negative means nirvana is ultimately you abolish this creation world, nature, and you are into it. Less negative line of supernormal experience also offers itself. For there takes place a large dynamic descent. So it's not just a descent, dynamic, because it changes us, begins to change us. Of light, knowledge, power, bliss, or other supernormal energies into our self of silence, and we can ascend into higher regions of the spirit, where its immobile status is the foundation of those great and luminous energies. Now follows few pages. So those who want to know where Sri Aurobindo has given the description of the different gradations of the mind, here is it. So there are other places also when he talks about spiritual evolution. But here in a very summary way he gives, and that's what we are going to read mainly. This is unique about Sri Aurobindo's yoga. Inner being opening, inner experiences we find in other yogas. Ascent above and opening to the static self, silence of nirvana is found in other yogas. But the descent of the greater consciousness, transforming mind, life and body, is unique to this yoga. So, he writes on the last paragraph of page 291, it is in the latter alternative that we find the secret we are seeking, the means of the transition. So there he says, very interesting now, for we perceive a graduality of ascent, a communication with a more and more deep and immense light and power from above, a scale of intensities which can be regarded as so many steps in the ascension of mind, or in a descent into mind from that which is beyond it. So now he begins to describe. It's like the only feeling one can have is wow. That's all. So we are aware of a sea-like downpour of masses of spontaneous knowledge which assumes the nature of thought but has a different character from the process of thought to which we are accustomed. So what is the normal process of thought? We have to think, try, strive, labor, make slideshows, PowerPoint presentations, read 100 books, then do some khichdi and finally say, probably. But this is a spontaneous knowledge which pours in seas like cascades of light. It is a luminous thought. It takes the form of thought. Nothing, for there is nothing here of seeking, no trace of mental construction. It's not something which is wanting to know and trying hard, and then you get some understanding. Because when we do that, we make fixed constructions. This is the big problem. So that's how philosophies are born. But when it comes from above, there is no construction. You can't say it is this or that. You can see the truth in all of them. And the whole thing comes as a logical arrangement of the totality. So that, depending on the level from where it comes. No labor of speculation or difficult discovery. It is an automatic and spontaneous knowledge from a higher mind that seems to it be in possession of truth and not in search of hidden and withheld realities. One observes that this thought with a capital T is much more capable than the mind of including at once a mass of knowledge in a single view. It has a cosmic character, not the stamp of an individual thinking. Beyond this truth thought, we can distinguish a greater illumination, instinct with an increased power and intensity and driving force. So this is how now from the higher mind one jumps to the illumined mind. The power, the light, the joy, one of the things of this, as it ascends up, the thought of the higher mind is, of course, spontaneous, automatic. As we ascend in the intensities, there is a joy which comes. There is a very beautiful description in Savitri. As a file of golden bliss, as a golden file of bliss pours down. So automatically that thought carries a delight. And that is one of the characters. The reverse is also true. That some people say that, I read Savitri, but I get a lot of joy, but I don't understand it. If you are getting joy, you have touched something very deep inside. Understanding will come later because it comes from that region. As we grow towards wider and wider regions, there is delight. At the higher level, mind level, though it has come through this process or in its ascent, we can have a larger thought, cosmic thought, but it makes fixed constructions. So somebody at the higher mind will give a process and method that this is the way. But as we go up, because we enter into vastness, we cannot say this is the way, and certainly not this is the only way. Because you begin to see that there are so many ways, and at one point you say, as mother's beautiful experience, where she sees people showing her from different windows. That's the experience I felt, one of the things I shared later on about the Mahakumbh. That each akhada, each sect is like through a window they are seeing the reality. And that's for them the ultimate reality. And each is satisfied with itself. Each thinks that it has got the ultimate. Each is seeing the sky, but its own strip of sky. And the path in front. So mother, they are all showing to mother, this what we are seeing. And mother says, okay. She's not very happy. She says, okay, yeah, you are seeing something. And then she steps out of that room where all these are cabined. And then she sees a man sitting in a purple robe below a tree eating something. So when he sees the mother, he says, mother, please taste from my dish also. So mother says, okay. She tastes his dish and says, "Wow, this is tasty. What is your path?" He says, "I have no path." He has entered into such a wideness. You can't say this way, that way. It is entered into wideness. Everywhere the path is there. There's a very beautiful little incident. Somebody who was staying in Golkund asked the mother, now this see a highest truth, different truths she is revealing. To somebody she will say, both Sri Aurobindo and the mother, don't go from here. So many instances. Dilip Kumar Roy will keep asking, he'll say, we never want you to go from here. But to this person he asked that, mother, should I stay in the ashram or go outside into the world? Now you see, to the world. Now see, the question is very loaded. Should I stay here or go to the world? Mother's answer, the world is everywhere and the divine is everywhere. You decide. How? See, it's a very loaded question. He's asking as if world is not here. She says world is everywhere. If you are trying to run away from the world, you will meet it here. And if you are seeking God, you will find Him anywhere. See how beautifully she says that those who are meant to do the transformation can pursue it anywhere. Those who are not meant for it will not be able to do it anywhere. So there are some very high, profound truths. But then it's so easy to pick up one side or one statement and turn it into an absolute truth. So, then there is illumined mind, and the further higher, we have truth vision, truth thought, truth sense, truth feeling, truth action. And in the supermind, there is a faculty of truth imagination. We are imagining, but it's an imagination which has come from the home of truth. There is no basis to it, and yet it has come from the home of truth. Now he comes to, so this is a very summary description of all these different stages, which basically are higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, where we have basically these four faculties which begin to manifest. We have the faculty of inspiration, we have the faculty of intuition, we have the faculty of revelation, and we have the faculty of right action. So in the Vedas, they were called as the four great goddesses, Ila, Mahi, Saraswati and Dakshina. Dakshina was always right action. So right action must also come by intuition, not by mental right and wrong. So gods or higher beings don't act based on a mental format, based on social niceties, etc. They act on the basis of a direct intuitive sense, what is to be done and what is not to be done. And it's so difficult to understand that. It can be so confusing to someone who cannot. So we have one of the examples that I have heard, that how when someone had come to give a performance in the playground, and he started by that how the mental power can achieve things, and he started by saying, I have heard this incidence, I don't know how far it is true, but sounds very likely. So the person started by saying, Jadi tumhara atma bal prabal, if you have a strong willpower. Pranabda suddenly got up and said, stop this, and started going out. Now, it's very socially very inappropriate. No, you're not supposed to. He's come and he's invited. What made matters more interesting is the mother also went. And then when people asked her, she said he had foreseen something. He had seen something which was going to happen. Now, she didn't reveal the truth. But many things that's why it is so difficult to judge a being. Impossible to judge even in normal life. Forget about it. But as we go up the ladder, it's near impossible to understand the actions. Then this is true even otherwise. Mystics, there is the story of Hazrat Musa, who is going, and one disciple says, I want to accompany you wherever you go. He says, are you sure? He says, yes. Okay, you will not question me anything. All right, what is there? You are going to do good. So he goes in a steamer, suddenly he is seen drilling a hole in the bottom. He says, what are you doing? It'll drown. He says, you remember, you're not supposed to ask a question. And later on he comes to know why each of his three acts ultimately were like saved them from inevitable catastrophe. So the divine's ways, that's why we cannot understand, because it's not based on a fixed format. With one person he acts in one way, with another person he acts in another way. Look at Krishna. He doesn't take care of any social niceties. He's supposed to be a guest of Duryodhan. He's supposed to eat meva in his house. But he goes to Vidur Patni, Vidur's house, where she is feeding him banana. That too not banana. Throwing away the banana, giving the peel. Yeah, beautiful song, no? Duryodhan ko meva tyago, saag vidur ghar khai. Now, it was not just about prem sagai. There was a message in that. Shri Krishna is a master diplomat. Every action carried a message. Very strong message that look here, though I have come as a neutral doot, but know my priorities. I am with Dharma and I stand with Pandavas. I don't want to take your hospitality. So it's very clear message he has given that don't think that I am really neutral. I have put my weight on the side of Dharma and with the Pandavas. That's the message he gives. And of course the love and all that is there. So these are the four faculties of the intuition, then the overmind, and then Sri Aurobindo described in its nature on page 293. In its nature and law, the overmind is a delegate of the supermind consciousness. It's delegate to the ignorance, or we might speak of it as a protective double, a screen of dissimilar similarity through which supermind can act indirectly on an ignorance whose darkness could not bear or receive the direct impact of a supreme light. This aha feeling of understanding this sentence I had in Kenya. So I must share that experience in Nairobi. So I walked into a toilet, and in the toilet it was like, unisex. So first you're a bit uncomfortable, doesn't matter. So you go inside the toilet. And from inside I could see everything outside. So I came out rushing. What kind of a toilet is this? You can see everything. He said, no, only from inside you can see, you can't see from outside. To me it was this sentence I remembered, that's how it is. The divine can see all of us, we can't see him. So I went and made sure that yes, I can't see. I don't know what is the technology. There must be. And I believe there are several places I have seen these glasses. I don't know why they put it. It's a bit crude, of course. Who would like to sit inside and see? But the fact is, it was that moment there was a revelation. Sri Aurobindo said protective double. This is a good example. From here, I can't see what is inside, but from inside I can see what is outside. So protective double. This is the example of that. It's one glass. I don't know how they do it, but they must have got inspired by this. So why? He has also given the reason, whose darkness could not bear or receive the direct impact of a supreme light. That's why this protective double. It protects creation from the direct action of the creator. Because that light and its intensity we cannot bear. That's why we have the story of avatars and millions of years of unfolding. Because otherwise we cannot bear that love, that light, that bliss. Even that peace, too much of peace makes people very uncomfortable. They start feeling something has gone wrong. They will go into inertia, actually, tamas. After some time, like there was a man in Bangalore, Bhavan, some chandan trees were taken away. You're not supposed to, because it's a problem, no? It's a government thing. So next day we asked him, yes, I saw the thief coming and taking away. So what were you doing? I was like a witness. I was practicing being a witness. Or Dara, with two hands, one hand, mosquito coils, and another one in his leg and meditating, and somebody is picking up things from his window and stealing away. And he is just enjoying that sight very impassively. So you see, it's so difficult once that consciousness begins to operate, even the consciousness of just the witness, It can be so overpowering, overwhelming. But supermind is a dynamic and passive reality. It is the home where Ishvara and Ishwari are together, but in the overmind they are separated. The moment, not the higher overmind, but as it comes down, they become Purusha and Prakriti. Sagun and Nirgun. That's what Sri Aurobindo reveals to us. That supermind transmits to overmind all its realities, but leaves it to formulate them in a movement and according to an awareness of things, which is still a vision of truth, and yet at the same time a first parent of the ignorance. A line divides supermind and overmind because it's a vision of truth with regard to that activity, that domain. It doesn't take into account the others, and therefore it becomes a parent of ignorance. There is no ignorance in overmind, but it is a parent of ignorance. That's why Sri Aurobindo asked the overmind creation to be dissolved. Because ultimately, after thousands of years, again ignorance possibility is there and it will come up. So, that's what he describes toward the end of this passage. What does the overmind do? It takes each aspect or power and gives to it an independent action in which it acquires a full separate importance and is able to work out, we might say, its own world of creation. Purusha and Prakriti, they are one. But lower down, they become as two. Conscious soul and executive force of nature are in the supramental harmony a two-aspected single truth, being and dynamis of the reality. There can be no disequilibrium or predomination of one over the other. In overmind, we have the origin of the cleavage, the trenchant distinction made by the philosophy of the Sankhya. So, many such things have happened. And we know how once somebody asked the mother, "Mother, please tell us about Purusha and Prakriti." Now see the divine ways. It's so beautiful to see the divine ways. She says, "I don't know, ask Nalini about it." So Nalinita says, mother says she doesn't know, I am totally ignorant. See, this was a little divine play. He didn't say, actually, mother, in Sankhya philosophy we have nothing. If mother says, I don't know, I must say. So he passed the test, I must say, with flying colors. So the mother says, actually, this distinction is for practical purposes lower down, but in reality they are one. Two sides of one reality. Obviously, she had the full supramental experience. So, and people still, try to do all this comparison, contrast, anyway, that's their problem. Ishvara and Shakti are one reality. And we have such interesting stories where sometimes they may seem to become as if different. In the story when Parvati ji and Shiv ji stand face to face against each other. Or in the story where Sati becomes Avidyamayi. She doesn't listen to Shiva. And there is a large scale destruction. But Parvati is the other way around. She is completely identified with Shiva. So we have always these two aspects. One where they are one, two sides of one reality, and the other where they begin to separate. So Nirgun, Sagun begins to separate. Purush Prakriti begins to separate. And finally he says on page 294, if we regard the power of the reality as so many Godheads, we can say that the overmind releases 1,000,000 Godheads into action, each empowered to create its own world. Each world capable of relation, communication and interplay with the others. There are in the Veda different formulations of the nature of the gods. It is said that they are all one existence, to which the sages give different names. This is spoken about the gods, not about religions, though we can logically correlate. Ekam sad vipra bahuda vadanti. It's about the gods. Of course, all religions are born from overmind and below, so they all owe allegiance to one or the other god. So, ultimately, even where they deny the god, it's the same power which operates. In the supermind, all this would be held together. So that's why we see in the Puranas something which is so interesting. First of all, millions of Godhead. So when people ask this question, 33 million, why we want to explain? Our divine is infinite. We should tell very openly, only 33 million. Infinite. Literally infinity. You keep counting. Each star there would be a little Godhead governing that. Each twitching of the nervous system, there would be a Godhead. Muscles, there would be a Godhead. Actually, if you read the Ayurveda, we see Ribhus, artisans of immortality. And then there are Godheads who have risen from the mortal world and become one with the seers. So when we look at that vast panorama, why 33 million? Each infinity. It releases them in the Overmind, but yes, they resolve into these four primary aspects, which is Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva and Krishna. Sat, Chit, Tapas, Ananda. This is the four. But from there it's endless. Or if we take the three, and Krishna is the common running behind them, then we have the idea of 300, 3,000, 3 million. So that famous story of Upanishad where Yagnavalk is asked, how many gods are there? So he says, the wise say that there are so many million, I think 33 million, or 3 million, or 3,000, or 3, or 1.5, or 1. So Gargi says, thumbs up. Got it. It depends on how you look at it. So there is one God. But the beauty is of this understanding is because all of them come from the one existence. Any God you can choose as Ishta Devta and realize the one. Even a stone you can make a God and realize the one. That's the beauty, that because of the Catholic nature of that consciousness, vast. So he speaks about all these gods and explains, and we can stop here. Just one line, we'll read and stop. Equally, for each individual being, his seeing or representation to himself of the world he lives in will depend on the poise or make which that consciousness has assumed in him. One human mental consciousness sees the world in sections cut by the reason and sense and put together in a formation which is also sectional. The house it builds is planned to accommodate one or another generalized formulation of truth, but excludes the rest or admits some only as guests or dependents in the house. This is the cause for all our troubles, fights, quarrels, because we live in parallel realities constructed by our mind, depending upon our background. As mother says, if Ravindraji becomes the trustee, he will pick up only those who are work oriented. If Pranab becomes the trustee, he will see only physical. So that's how it is, because then that becomes the prominent part. And in everyday life also we realize it. Each one sees things from his own little angle. And even when we rise to the stature of the gods, still this becomes, it's our unique line of descent and line of evolution. We'll stop here.